You're listening to Miss Style, Strength, and Grace with Deidra Murphy. This is your one-stop shop for style, fashion, health, and fitness. Deidra's passion is to help empower women to reach their fullest potential, both inside and out. Deidra and her guests will be discussing how to develop your style, health, and lifestyle hacks to energize your day and inspire you to keep reaching higher levels of success. Deidra is a professional fashion stylist, health guru, and Mrs. Washington 2017. It's time to get open and honest with Deidra.
Hello and welcome today, listeners. I am super eager to share today's guest. I feel like I already know her, and I'm going to explain a little bit about her. So our guest today is Amber Lilyestrom, and she is a transformational branding and business strategist, writer, and speaker. She's been featured in Entrepreneur and Working Mother magazine, and she's the host of the Amber Lilyestrom Show podcast. She helps other entrepreneurs turn their passions into heart-centered brands and thriving businesses. From idea to conceptions to the construction of businesses and digital landscapes, Amber supports visionaries and leaders in the changing world and their lives. In changing the world and their lives. Okay, I'm going to start over.
Okay, you're doing great.
Well, hello and welcome today, listeners. I am super eager to share today's guest. Her name is Amber Lilyestrom, and she is a transformational branding and business strategist, writer, and speaker. She's been featured in Entrepreneur and Working Mother magazine and is the host of her own podcast, The Amber Lilyestrom Show. She helps entrepreneurs turn their passions into heart-centered brands and thriving businesses. From idea conception to the construction of the business and its digital landscape, Amber supports visionaries and leaders in changing the world and their lives. Amber spent 10 years working in collegiate athletics marketing, managing the University of New Hampshire Wildcats brand, as well as teaching sports marketing and mentoring student interns. She was recognized as one of the top sports marketing professionals in the nation. I feel like I've already met Amber in person since she is also a fellow Mrs. America sister queen. Although she and I never competed together, she was Mrs. New Hampshire 2016. So we just miss each other, and I'm super eager to welcome and have Amber on the show today. So hello, Amber.
Hello, sister. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. Like I said, I feel like I already know you because you competed with Natalie Lutmer at Mrs. America, who was Mrs. Washington 2016, and then Mrs. America 2017.
Mrs. America. Yeah. So exciting. She's such a bright light.
She really is. I just got to see her this weekend because I gave up my title as Mrs. Washington this last weekend. So she was at our pageant.
Oh, well, congratulations to you too.
Oh, thank you. Well, as we get going into the podcast today, can you share with our listeners a little snapshot of who you are and what you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as you said, thank you so much for sharing my intro there. I'm like, oh, it's pretty lengthy. I need to trim that back. I am a transformational branding strategist and business coach. I've written a small book called Master Your Money Mind. So I'm technically an author, I guess now, which is exciting. Speaker. I host live events and retreats, and I'm a momapreneur. I have a 4.5-year-old daughter. I'm a wife, of course. Being Mrs. America, Mrs. New Hampshire America, I needed to be a wife to do that. And I'm a soul sister on a mission. I am here to learn and to grow and to really, experience my own evolution in this human experience that I get to do.
I love that. So specifically, how do you work with other entrepreneurs, whether it's men or women or other mamapreneurs? Like, what does that look like to work with you?
Yeah. So right now, my offerings are really centered around my mastermind and inner circle programs, which are just really intimate coaching experiences where there are opportunities to do one-to-one stuff, also in-person retreats, and to attend my Ignite Your Soul Summit live event. I also have a program called the Brand and Biz Academy. But, really at the core of it with the work that I do with my clients, it's really about a deep level of discovery and clarity in figuring out who they are, what their purpose is, and how to create a brand and a business that is actually going to align with that purpose, much like you've done with your work. And then taking that clarity of purpose and translating it into experiences, offerings, ways to monetize and to make an impact, so that they can live into the fullness of who they really are and be of service in that process. We do no one any good on this planet when we are operating in a job and a career path that doesn't make us feel alive, doesn't make us feel good. It doesn't fulfill us in some way, shape, or form. Even if it's just that we feel supremely fulfilled by the paycheck that we make and the way we get to help people, if we are unhappy in the way that we're spending our professional lives, which is a huge percentage of the time we spend during our lifetime, it's not helping anyone. And so I help a lot of people make that transition out of corporate careers to launch their businesses. I help a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, and I also help those who are maybe have a business, but they just feel like they're kind of missing the mark, and figuring out how to really position it in a way that's going to help them thrive and maximize their true gifts.
Wow, there's so much information there. My brain is like, oh, I want to go this route and ask this question next. So I want to find out first, like, how do you help a business owner figure out what their heart-centered passion is and what their true mission is?
It's a good question. I bring them through a lot of different processes. I do guided visualizations and things like that. But I think what I do is I help them just drop into connecting with their soul. And I in fact, actually happened in a session with one of my mastermind students today. I asked her a question. I said, what makes you feel really alive and excited? And you folks listening to this can't see this, but she did that thing where she put her hand on her chin and she looked up. And she was like, and she started getting up into her brain, and she started getting into like the overthinking loops that she's done a million times, which we all have, right? When we operate from our head and not our heart, we disconnect from the most important part of ourselves. And so I help them really drop into that part of them by, connecting to a former version of themselves, to their childhood self, to, we just work to find the keyhole that's going to really help us open the door to who they actually are and what it gets them excited. And it's a little bit of, it's definitely, there's some spiritual work woven into that. And it's also part of, my intuitive gift, that I have had all the days of my life. And now I get to actually do it for my profession. And I love it because, people just, all we want is to be seen. That's all we want, is to feel like we matter. And my work really is about helping people embrace the fact that they do matter and helping them matter to themselves, and really design their life in a way that allows them to feel aligned with what makes them excited, as I was saying earlier. And to, I think it's like the cool part is that once we kind of get into that track and we start setting our career up to actually serve us on a deep level, we inevitably are going to be of greater service to others. And of course, we're going to attract in more abundance as a result. And then we're going to be able to make a bigger impact. We'll be able to give back in bigger ways with our time, our money, with our heart. We're going to feel more generous across the board, less constricted. It just helps with exponential results in so many realms of being.
I love that. And it almost seems too that you're very intuitive and you're able to perceive that in others. So even if somebody was trying to do this type of like personal discovery work on their own, by having you there to guide them through it, you're able to perceive things that they're not being able to see in themselves. Yeah,
but it's because we block it, right? And it's because we're all just trying to protect ourselves. I think that's a big piece, is that so many of us, if you just look at, I was actually like, this is really kind of a funny story. I played soccer. I played on the women's soccer league. I played soccer in college. And so last night I was standing on the sidelines, and one of the girls kind of put two and two together. And she said, wait a minute, are you that woman who's on the poster at Laney and Lou for that event, the soul thing? I said, yeah, the Ignite Your Soul Summit. I'm like, yeah, that's me. That's my, and she was like, oh my God. In her mind, you could see her brain like doing acrobatics and being like, wait, what? That's you. You're here on my team. Like, you're the same person. That's so weird. She's like, I've seen that poster a million times and I almost went, and then I like talked myself out of it. And I was like, well, now you're going to go because now you know me. And I started having this conversation with the women on the sidelines when we were waiting while our teammates were playing, about how everything that we do in our lives is because we believe it'll make us happy. We believe it'll bring us joy in some way, shape, or form. Even when, we use something like alcohol, or we eat sugar to make ourselves feel a different physical state. It's because we think that it's going to make us feel better. And so even when we are in a job that doesn't fulfill us, we think that the paycheck that we bring home is going to make us feel good, right? Because it's going to help us keep our lights on. But the truth of the matter is most of us don't open to the fact that we could feel even better than that. And we don't give ourselves permission to even want something different. And so we sit in this place of like being moderately happy or mildly happy and suffering at the same time, and too scared to just even give ourselves permission to want something more. And we use drugs and alcohol and, behaviors that are destructive to sort of medicate ourselves from the suffering that we are feeling in this like low grade way for most of our lives, because we just are so terrified of actually giving ourselves permission to want more in this life that we're living.
That's so deep right there. Like, I love how deep we're getting here. And it's true. Like, we all get there, and we use different vices as our way of coping. So for instance, like, a lot of my listeners will know that I was in a really deep hole with my insomnia and depression, and then weight gain on top of it. And I was using shopping and clothing to fill those empty holes in my heart, because I thought I couldn't be happy any other way. And so now it's like my mission and my passion to help other women feel confident and feel beautiful without having to spend thousands of dollars on a whole new wardrobe. So
yeah,
I love
really
that.
powerful. And it's like, every person has their own thing. And I think the way to discover what that is just to ask yourself, what do I find myself reaching to when I get bad news, or I feel nervous or anxious about something? For me, it was sugar. It was always like, and even it's the truth of it is, and I don't know if this is true for you, but it's still a thing where I will, at nighttime, if I'm anxious about something, I'll want to eat chocolate. I'll think about it, and I'll say, I can feel my body being like, let's eat chocolate. And I don't,
It's like,
I'm not in
there
a
is
place.
a pint of ice cream in the fridge.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I'm no longer in the practice of like depriving myself if I want something, or beating myself up over it in the ways that I used to, because I had an eating disorder for 15 years. I now just allow myself, and I have that internal conversation because I actually trust myself now. And I say, is that really what you want? It's like this inner dialogue. Like, do you think, will that really help? Because if it will, then great, go have it. It's okay. And I give myself free license to kind of do whatever. And 9 times out of 10 now, I'm able to just go, yeah, I don't really actually want that. It's going to make me feel kind of gross. I just need to go to bed. I'm just tired, and I need to just sleep, because all I'm doing is just sitting here spinning, like refreshing Instagram, like a spaz. And I need to just go put my phone on the charger and go upstairs and go to bed, and just unplug from this. So I think pay attention to your patterns, and pay attention to the things that you're reaching for when life feels difficult, because there's a lot of insights there, and a lot of also an opportunity for massive freedom for you to say, hey, I'm going to break this pattern this round. I'm not going to partake in that this go. I'm going to give myself a break, and I'm just going to go do something that actually would be really life-giving for me instead.
I love that. I find myself having to do that too, and have that same conversation, because I developed an eating disorder in my late 20s. I feel like most women that have battled with it, started at a young age, as maybe teenagers, and I didn't develop it until my late 20s. And I still find myself having those kind of conversations, like especially late at night. Like,
yeah.
If I'm having a struggle with insomnia, a lot of the times that's where my brain goes, is like, well, what could you do to waste the time? Because you're going to be up anyway. Why don't I go raid the fridge and find the chocolate or find the ice cream? And I have to separate myself from that and say, no, at least do something productive. If you are going to be up, like maybe go clean something, or read a book, or even if you're not going to fall asleep by reading, like journal or something that's going to help quiet the mind, rather than just reach for the chocolate and the ice cream, because that's what led me down the path of the weight gain and the insomnia in the first place.
Yeah, well, and also remember, it's like we're reaching for those things because we think they're going to give us this temporary joy. It's going to make us feel good. It's going to be a dopamine hit. And that actually is in our brains, like the feeling of joy, right? It's like, that's what addiction is all about. And so if we can, for me, I find I always want to, I want to understand things, though I know that's not my plight here as a human. It's not to understand, it is to experience, it's not to have to try to understand every single thing. But I know that if I can just sort of like unwind that ball of yarn a little bit and go, well, why do you really want that? And, you know, and say like, but what is this insomnia really about? You know, like, what is this really about? And keep peeling that back and peeling it back and figuring out, you know, it's like, oh man, it's because I'm still afraid, or I still feel like it was my fault that whatever trauma in my life happened to me, or I think I'm a fraud and I shouldn't be doing this podcast or whatever. You know, it's like there's always something deeper that lives underneath it. And these are just behaviors that we use to cope with it. And I literally think it's like detective work. And I enjoy doing that with my clients because, you know, some people are probably like, whoa, but you said you do branding and business coaching. Like, what in the actual is happening right now? And the truth is that, you know, branding is really our sacred opportunity to be who we really are. Brands are the way that you define a brand is like it's the essence of a person. It's the essence of a company. It's not something you can hold. It's not tangible. A brand is not a logo. A logo is an element of the brand's identity that helps you have a feeling that you associate with the actual brand itself. And so branding is this like very emotional experience, you know, and I can just say, like, I'll just prove it to you. I'm going to say a couple of brands to you, and I'm going to ask you what like color sensory experience do you have when I say the brand? Okay. Are you ready?
Okay. All right. I feel like I'm being put on the hot seat.
You'll get it. These are easy ones. Walmart. What color comes to your mind?
Yellow. Okay.
What smell comes to your mind?
I never go into Walmart. I don't know. I smell like, I guess, groceries and like bakery breads because our Walmart here is a superstore or whatever. What's a grocery store too?
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So for me, it's like Subway is in there. So I always smell Subway in our Walmart, right? And it's like, oh, that's like this weird kind of smell. Like I'm going and there's like clothes everywhere when I walk in the door, but then I smell subs at the same time. The next one I'll say, this should probably be an easy one. Target. What color?
Red.
Yeah. And what other sensations come to you when you think of Target?
I instantly smell the popcorn because when you first walk in, there's that snack area, even though it's right next to all the accessories, which is where I typically go inside of Target.
Yes. And don't you have like, there's like a little lift when I said Target, you like your whole body language changed from Walmart to Target.
I know with Walmart, right? I was like, Target. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Starbucks.
Green is the color. And I smell coffee. That like energy.
Immediately you feel it. You can see yourself there. You see the logo. You see like the like sort of smoky feel of walking into a Starbucks with the, you know, the floors and the kind of like the layout of how it is. Like you just immediately go there. And so again, you can't hold the logo, but look at you. You have this sensory experience and you feeling about the brand. And it was either a good one or a bad one, or maybe an ambiguous one. Mm-hmm. And so branding is all about emotion. It's all about feeling. And so when we build our brands, and especially as personal brands, which is extra interesting, people are going to have a feeling when we say the names of entrepreneurs. Like, okay, Gary Vee. Do you know who Gary Vee is? You get a feeling?
Yeah. My husband listens to his podcast all the time.
Yeah. So what words come up for you when you think of Gary Vee?
Very energetic, strong personality. Very smart. I think of him as a very intelligent person. From what I've heard of him, I usually just kind of listen to him on happenstance if my husband's listening to him. But yeah, a very intelligent person.
Yeah. For me, it's like intensity, you know, like there's like this intensity and like conviction in his work. What about Oprah?
I'm not a big Oprah fan, so I don't listen to her a lot.
So you have an experience, right? You're not an Oprah fan. So you're like, meh, that doesn't resonate for you. Though some of your listeners might be like, Super Soul Sunday. Like,
and they might know more for things. The only thing I think of is like, and you get a car, and you get a car. And
Yeah. And so she gives you a feeling of like, maybe that's generosity. Maybe that's just like abundance, you know. She's maybe it goes down a whole other path, like she's rich, you know, and I don't know. But the key is that it creates an experience. It creates emotion that really like augments in people's brains. And also, here's the key. If you're not showing up whole, if you're not telling your whole story, if you're not like really showing up I'm going to use the word clean. I don't mean like in the relationship to like substance abuse or anything like that. I just mean like, you're clean. You're not, like you said to me before we hit record, is there anything that's like off limits to talk about in this interview? And I said, no, you know, you can ask me anything. It's literally, I'll talk about anything. I'm an open book. And if I don't want to, I'll just tell you, like, I'm very open in that way. Many of my clients are just confused. And so they kind of blend in, or they become like a diluted version of somebody else in the space. And then they don't make an impact. Like, think about pageants, right? It's like the women who are convicted and they stand in their own and they're a little bit unique. And I remember, I will tell you this right now. When I saw Natalie, I'd never met her before, but I was like doing the scan of the room and I was like, oh, she's probably going to win. Like, I remember being in the room being like, oh yeah, she's like definitely fits the mold of what this brand is all about. And she's like brilliant and beautiful and poised and all, and like so sweet and happy. And she has like 1 million kids, and she's like definitely literally she has like 6 children. I'm like, she's a total rock star. I literally said it. I called it. I'm like, she's probably going to win. So yeah. So a little bit of a sidebar, but I think it's important for people to kind of hear that process, and also to like contemplate within yourself, whether you're an entrepreneur and have your own business or not, you know, you're representing your own personal brand in all the realms of your life that you show up in.
Oh my gosh. I was just talking about this to businesses yesterday. I do style talks, and I connect the idea of personal branding with your style and how you choose to show up. And I was like, regardless of whether or not you own your own business, even if you're the front desk receptionist at a business, you're representing not only that company, but your own personal brand, and you're putting out into the world the experience that you want people to have with you.
Yes.
And so that's my like mission, is to help encourage women to put out in the world the experience that they want people to have with them, and use that through clothing and style and fashion. And it's not just about, for me, it's not just about like, oh, well, you have to be wearing this because it's trending right now. It's like, no, what makes you feel confident? I mean,
I said to my friend who's a stylist, when I was preparing for my Ignite Your Soul Summit, I said to her, you know, we were going through, and like, you're going to stand on stage for 2 days. You need to figure out outfits and all this. It's like, it's a challenging task. And especially when you have different, you know, insecurities about your body, or you're just wanting to like really feel powerful. And what I opted for were these amazing dresses from Ted Baker that I just love. I feel like Ted Baker's like my personal stylist. And, I love them so much. They have pockets, they like perfect fit. They just make me feel really confident. But I said to her, I'm like, I will not wear heels. I will only wear booties. Like, that is the only option, or I will just be barefoot. And she's like, oh, God bless America. Okay. You know, I won't. I dance, I jump, I move around a lot. I mean, let's just speak. I was wearing dresses and I was jumping all around, but that's me, you know? And so we had to have like a little like slip put into one of the dresses to keep it weighted down. So when I was going to be moving around a lot, that it wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. And so we had to think of these things, but, we found great booties to go with everything, and it all worked out really perfectly. And I felt super comfortable and athletic in my own way, even though super feminine too. But I think that's an important part of the story. It's like, I have to own that and be, you know, clear that, you know, I get that it would look much cuter to wear these like sweet high heels, but I physically can't do that. And it doesn't feel authentic to me. So I won't. And I'm going to find an alternative.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I would have given you the same advice as if I would have been your stylist. Like, let's find something that is going to be authentic for you.
Yeah.
I love that. Well,
I mean, I was like, I want to wear wedge sneakers. And she's like, no, it looks like you did not it looks like you wore the wrong shoes. I was like, okay, fine. Booties
let's find a happy medium.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Well, speaking more about your business, I do want to hear, I mean, I've heard it personally, but I want to know more about the story of why you went this route. Why did you leave your career, you know, as a teacher and being in a brand marketing position to starting your own endeavors as a business owner?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that the catalyst for me was when I became a mom. I had a near-death experience during my birth and my daughter's birth. And, you know, it's funny. I say catalyst because for years prior and for most of my life, I knew that I wanted to do the work that I'm doing now. I knew that I wanted to be a speaker. I knew that I wanted to write books. I knew I wanted to stand on stages and host events and like really connect women to themselves, like help them really discover themselves and learn how to love themselves, because that was something that I didn't know how to do. I lived the majority of my life basically hating myself. And that's hence why I had an eating disorder and all this. I remember just even in my early 30s, like speaking to my own coaches and friends and being like, so it's clear that you love yourself, right? I remember saying this to one of my writing coach, and she was like, well, yeah. And I said, can you explain to me how you did that? And she was like, what? Like, can you? I'm like, no, this is a weird question. I get that. But I never learned that. I didn't learn how to love myself. I did. My mom, loves us, but doesn't really love herself. It's never been like, that wasn't something that we talked about, like self-love. Or even really self-compassion in many ways. And so that's something in the last, I would say, decade of my life, it's been something I've had to really learn, and especially becoming a mother to a little girl, I knew that was something I needed to double down on because I wanted to be a really good role model for her with that. But it wasn't, again, something that I had learned from a young age. So when Ani was born, I had a high spinal tap and it froze my diaphragm and I stopped breathing on the operating room table. And in that space in between motherhood and I don't know what, honestly, I really believed that I was going to die in that moment. I had this massive clarity and this knowing that everything was going to be okay, no matter what happened, that I had been so loved in my life. And I just felt this profound sensation of gratitude and appreciation and just deep, deep love. And when I went into that full space of love and gratitude, I ultimately surrendered to God and to the universe and whatever your belief system is. I surrendered to something bigger than me. And in that moment, it was almost as if a switch had completely flipped and I was awake. I was conscious. I was back in the room and the anesthesiologist was behind me. And I remember him yelling to the surgeon and saying, go, go, go. And they started the procedure. This is like before I wasn't even like cut open yet. I was just like laying there getting prepared for the surgery. And that's when all this went down. And Ani was born shortly thereafter. And Ben came in the room afterwards and got to meet our daughter and hold her. And it was like this rebirth for me. And I knew, it took time. It took about 8 months after Ani's birth for me to figure out and reconcile walking away from my career that I put so much of my life into. I was there for 10 years. I loved my job, but I knew that in order to be the mom I wanted to be and to do my true work in the world, I had to leave that job and I needed to go and launch my own thing and figure that out as I went along. And so I did. And, here we are 4-ish years later and my daughter's 4.5 now. And the business is, we'll hit 7 figures this year. And my husband's retired. He's working with us in the business. And we are, just helping hundreds of families, women, but families, because it really impacts their children and their partners and their future partners and future children, in helping them just really get in alignment with their true purpose and doing their work in the world.
Mm. I loved hearing that story. And I really want to know, what gave you the courage to leave that 10-year career and take this leap of faith?
Yeah. I think, many, many things, but at the core of it, and I really want to share this part of the story because I think it's important for people to hear, for even if just one person hears this and it resonates for them. I was laying on the operating room table and I was in this space where I really truly believe that I was not going to live. I remember thinking to myself, like, really, God? Really? Like, I mean, I don't even get to meet my daughter,
Like, this is how it's going to end, is right here?
Yeah, I was like, this is like disbelief. But in that, the next sentence was like, okay, like it was palms open. It was, okay, if this is what it's supposed to be, I am grateful. I am grateful. And I just saw visions of my husband and my parents. And I just felt like this profound feeling of love, not only just for the love that I had received from them, but also the love I had for them. Like both sides of that equation, because in intimate relationships with people that we love, like it is about the love that we are able to give as much as the love we are able to receive, and it just filled me up like beyond. And so the message is this, is that if that is what we feel when we die, and I have done research on folks who've had near-death experiences, and this is a consistent finding and report from many of these people, that they literally go into a place of profound love and appreciation, like beyond what any of us have felt just in our conscious human experience. It's like so deep. It's like it could make me weep how beautiful it was. And that overwhelming sense of love, if that's what's there when we die, if that is truly what we meet when we die, which I believe in the deepest way possible that it is, in experiencing, like even watching pets die, like even watching them pass on, even watching, loved ones who were really sick and going into that final moment and chapter of their life. If that's what meets us when we die, my question to you is, well, then what are we so afraid of while we're alive? And so what do we actually have to lose, truly, while we're alive? And why don't we go for the things that make us feel excited and joyful and like we're actually being of service? And so it kind of like cracked that whole thing open for me. And I realized that, my life was not about the title on the door. It was not about the salary that I was making. I really thought about, it was not going to say associate athletic director on my headstone if I died at that moment. It was going to say wife. It was going to say mother. It was going to say daughter, friend, passionate soul on a mission, woman who was here to love and to live and to help others. It's like, what would people remember about me? They wouldn't be talking about my title at my funeral. And so it sounds like super morbid, but it's the truth, guys. And, the thing that most people regret, if you read Bronnie Ware's book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, it's like, what did people regret the most? That they didn't spend more time with the people they loved, that they didn't tell them enough, that they spent too much time working. And I was spending 50 hours a week, very often working in that job, nights and weekends. And I had been a Division I athlete before that. And so I didn't have any time. I was always working at something in the pursuit of being worthy and being good enough. And so I had to go from, essentially being a somebody. I was going to be the president of all the sport marketing professionals in the country, going from being a somebody to being a nobody who's brand new with like 7 people on my email list. It was like me 4 times, my mom, my husband, and like my best friend. Mm-hmm. And I had to just take that leap of faith. And I put my business out there into the world before I quit. So I think it's important to speak to that. I didn't just like cold turkey quit, but I did give my notice with only 1 client. That is actually a true story. And I had this knowing that, I'm kind of a badass, just like you, and I was like, if I've been able to do all of these things, then who's to say, like, what's possible if I now have all this time in the world? Yes, I'm going to be taking care of my daughter full time, but even that is so much more time to create something incredible in relationship to all the time that I have been dedicating to my career.
I love that story. And too, it reminds me a lot of some of the events and conferences, I guess, that I've gone to, what you're speaking towards, and maybe you're a fan of him or not, but it reminded me a lot of like Tony Robbins stuff, because, talking about like love and appreciation. And I even got to go to an event called the Breakthrough Experience with Dr. DeMartini. I don't know if you know who he is, but he talks about like how the universe and power, whether it's you view it as God or the universe or infinite wisdom, is love. It just all comes down to love. And so I've never had a near-death experience, but I've been in that state where you're just feeling that emotional love, and it's like tears of joy, and you don't know how to describe it other than that. So I can imagine that what you experienced was even tenfold of anything that I've comprehended. And anyway.
Well, and it's all relative. We all have to just tap into our own versions of that. But I think it's just so important for us to share our stories, because you just never know who needs to hear it at the moment that they need to hear it. So when you feel those divine nudges to tell your story, and when you have the platforms to do it, it's like, we have to do it, friends, because you just never know whose life you could totally impact and change. And I will be infinitely grateful to people like Tony Robbins, who has been one of my mentors, though he doesn't know it. Someday he will, for all of my life. And he's been someone who I have looked up to and, frankly, learned. I mean, I've gone to Date with Destiny, Unleash Power Within, and wanted to create my version. So I don't want to be Tony Robbins. And a lot of people will say, Amber, they introduced me on podcasts as like a female Tony Robbins. And I think that's great. It's a huge compliment. But I'm not interested in being Tony. I'm interested in being me and sharing my stories. And, also I'm a woman. And so my live event is like a women's sort of Tony Robbins type event, but but I have lots of my friends and soul sisters on stage with me. I'm not trying to do a 14-hour weekend by myself because that's not realistic for my life. I don't do this thing by myself. I have so many amazing women in my life that help me, and we need each other. And so I call in my girls, and also some brothers.
Your tribe. I love that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I went to UPW, the Unleash Your Power thing last year at Tony Robbins, and he goes on stage for hours at a time without even taking a break.
14.
Yeah.
It's wild. He's like,
understand it. I'm like, how does he not need a potty break? Like, I've already potty breaked like 5 times right now.
That's what I always wonder. That's like one of the things I will ask him whenever I have him on my podcast someday.
Right? I'm like, do you just have I don't even want to know. But
do you use like a catheter? Like,
what,
like
literally, what is happening? I was like, I don't want to say it.
Yeah, I'll say it.
Like, do you have a built-in catheter? Because I don't understand. Yeah, but I totally understand. I totally agree. I do want to ask, was there ever a moment in building this business, you're doing it as a momopreneur, trying to create this newfound freedom for your family and your life, was there ever a moment where you wanted to quit and just call it a day?
Never wanted to quit, but freaked out millions of times. So I think it's like a combo, like feeling anxiety and feeling like, the pressure, like a lot of pressure. And then just literally feeling I was going to have a panic attack. Yes, many, many times. But I think one of the parts of my story, and I think this is part of what's really helped the success, is that failure was just never an option. It was like, I'm doing this, I'm going for it. I see it so clearly. I know it's going to unfold in whatever way needs to unfold. But there was never like this opportunity to sort of like opt out and say that I can't do it and it's not going to work, because it's like, I sit in this chair and I just think about like, gosh, what if it didn't? Like, what would I do? Because I'm like basically not hireable. I'd be like the worst employee ever because I'm such an entrepreneur. I'm such a like, I'm going to try this. And I don't like having rules and schedule and somebody telling me what to do. I always want to be this like, and I could do that in my old corporate job to some degree. It was very much an entrepreneurial type role where I was designing things and creating new marketing plans and crazy ideas and throwing them out to sponsors and being like, should we do this? And, I was always the one that would like beg forgiveness rather than ask permission because I had lots of crazy ideas and implemented lots of really crazy things in my athletic department. So yeah, I think for me, it wasn't about ever really wanting to quit, but just because I'm so passionate about it, but feeling that overwhelm, that anxiety, that pressure that could have swallowed me up for sure.
At what point did you realize, whether or not you were in that state of like panic attack, that this was the right path?
I realize it's the right path when I look at, the moms and the fact that they are like the course of history for their family has been completely changed because they left their corporate job or their teaching job or whatever they were going to go back to. And now they're raising their kids themselves. And like, just thinking about, like I think about Lucy or Hazel, or, Mason, like these kids whose moms who took my programs, who literally have their moms, and their mom might be sometimes having to have them do a little more screen time than they want. But it's like, they have their mom, they have their family, and I think that to me, and I won't get into the whole story, but, deep down, I do think that there's a tether to my childhood, and my mom had to go to work. And when my mom went to work, I was sexually molested when I was 4 years old. Mm. And so I
did not know that by like somebody that your family knew, kind of a thing.
Yeah. A caregiver that was a extended family member. And it was, it was a very obviously tumultuous time after, it was more like the aftermath. I was testifying against him in court and family was siding with him and there was a separation, and my mom, my parent, we were like kind of ousted, from my mom's family, and really, really intense. And just watching all the emotions and all the things that that my parents went through, like the pain and the heartache that my mom went through. Like, can you even imagine being a mother and then having that happen to your child when you were going to work and you were doing the best you could? Like
the guilt
and
that
then
she must
the
have
guilt
felt.
that she's lived with her, like her whole life. Like, it's just like, it could just swallow me up. But I didn't want to have to be in that position, and not to say that like that that's going to happen, but also, and this was my platform for Mrs. New Hampshire America, was supporting an organization here in New Hampshire that is really focused on the prevention and the recovery of domestic violence and sexual abuse survivors. And in my business now, I've given 5-figure donations to them to support their movements and to help with specifically education in the preschool and like the pre-K areas to help little kids, to understand like what is right and what is not, and to help them to communicate, to get the support. Because the fact is this: 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys are victims of sexual abuse. And that's only what is reported. And so if we think about, I'm sure you could think about 1 in 4 of your friends, is a survivor of sexual abuse or rape or whatever. And so it's just really important to me. And so I think it's like all connected. It's like this opportunity for me. And I knew when I was a little kid that I wanted to write books. I wanted to stand on stages. I wanted to tell my story. I wanted to help others. I wanted to help others who were victims of the same thing feel free, survivors. I wanted to help them rise up because I did, and I went and I used my voice and I got justice. And I was, and my mom actually became like an advocate and spoke and got a bill passed to help protect children and families. And so I wanted to carry that forth. And I also wanted to have a business and an income in my life where I could write checks that could make a difference. And so in December of last year, we made a $10,000 donation to Haven, New Hampshire. And it was like, this makes me really emotional to talk about it, but it was like 5-year-old Amber was signing that check.
And it was like it had come full circle in your life. Oh. Sorry, I'm gonna tear up myself too. Thank you so much for being open and sharing that.
You're welcome. But this is important, this is why I talk about purpose. And if I just stayed in my corporate job, which got me to where I am, it taught me, it provided the education. It was a blessing. It taught me how to run events, how to use actual in-event music to manipulate human experience, to help people have an emotional experience, which is one of the most powerful parts of the events that I do. But I knew I had to go into this next chapter in order to really live out my destiny and my calling and to be of service and to share. I wouldn't be having this conversation with you right now, telling you this story, and maybe having someone on the other end of this receiver listening to this and going, man, people need to hear my story too. And I need to have the courage to share my story, or this job isn't really what is right for me, or this relationship, or this, whatever I said I needed to do because I felt like I was supposed to, but it's going to give me courage to step into my truth. We need more people doing that. We need more people stepping into what's right for them and not living a life of just obligatory oppression that we are essentially signing ourselves up for.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's true too that, we all need to share our stories so that way we can help inspire somebody. It's like what you said earlier, that you never know who's going to need that inspiration or that story. And I've had, people in my life, even, especially I sometimes find that it's the people that are closest to us that, are a little bit more guarded, and they might say I don't think you should share that part of your life or that story, or that's, maybe embarrassing for our family. And I've had to turn around and say, you know what, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm open about sharing things that have happened to me because I want to inspire someone else, or maybe they're going through something similar and they need to hear this story too.
Well, and I'll tell you this, and just to really bring that point home, I did, for the first time, I shared that part of my story publicly on a larger forum. I did an event as Mrs. New Hampshire for Haven, and they asked me if I would share my story, and I said yes. And it was a fundraising event, and it was amazing. And I made a donation from stage as Amber Lilyestrom, the entrepreneur, which was really exciting to be able to kind of have that duality of doing the and both of it all. So using my Mrs. New Hampshire experience as a platform to really connect with this organization and to share my story. And then also being able to personally give this donation to back it up and show women, business owners, we can do this too, sisters, we can do this thing. And so I told told my story, and we ended up raising like over $15,000 that night, which was like more than double what they thought they were going to raise, which was really special. And there were like teachers in the crowd raising their hands. They're like, I can only give $25, but I am giving it. It was like such an incredible night. It was so, so powerful. And then these parents came over to me and they introduced themselves and they said, we just want to say thank you for telling your story. Our daughter, Caitlin, was 25 and she was sexually molested, but we found out after she committed suicide. Oh. And they said, please promise us that you'll never stop telling your story. And it was like this moment of their daughter can't tell her story, right? But we can, because we're here. And so this is our duty, and what if Caitlin had heard me tell my story? Maybe it would have been a different outcome. And so I take this really seriously, to share these stories about the near-death experience, about the abuse, about my fear, but also about my rise and about what's possible, and it's not that I don't suffer and that I don't struggle at times. But I just know that it's like, there's more important work to be done. And so I do my best to work through it and to also commit to what I'm here for, and to surround myself with others who are doing this deep work as well, and to ask for help when I need it, and to encourage others to do the same. And really just try to, live in the light that is the opportunity of my life.
If somebody's listening and they have a story to share, or they have something that they have in their heart that they know they want to pursue, what piece of advice would you give to her in order to encourage her to start reaching for that goal?
Mm-hmm. I would encourage her. It's like finding the right person in your life can be finding a gold mine, just finding a person in your life that is a safe person that you trust, that you can connect with, that you can share stories with, that you can sort of test it out with them first if you feel afraid, and not everybody's ready to post it on Instagram, and to get on a podcast and talk about some of the most painful stories of their life. This takes time. This is not the first time I've told these stories, and it takes practice. And I just encourage you to find those safe places. And, that's part of what I've created in my business, is like a place for women to really just be honest, and to really, connect inward. And so I think finding like-spirited, not just like-minded, like-spirited people, tribes, groups of women who are moving in the same direction of where it is you want to go. You don't have to be there already to be qualified. I have a free group called the Y Warrior Tribe, and people come into that space and they share, this is what I want to do, but I'm so far away from that. And we're like, yeah, girlfriend, high five. Keep going. We're here to cheer you on and support you because we've been in your shoes. We understand what it feels like. So I think finding that tribe of people to support you and connecting with them and really allowing yourself to open there and practice what that feels like is the easiest, the surest way to really get to the place of eventually being able to share your story in a more open way than maybe you feel like you're ready to right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like with anything, not only as a business owner and entrepreneur, but just in general in life, it all starts with baby steps. You got to take one step at a time. Actually, just yesterday, I posted a really vulnerable picture and content on my Facebook page, and it was a no makeup selfie, kind of that thing that's been going around on social media. And, I talked about how it's a muscle, confidence is a muscle. We have to keep continually working on it. And, I didn't start out and just one day tell myself oh, hey, I'm pretty and I'm beautiful. It took years of me telling myself that every morning and doing it in my own ways. And then finally being able to start talking about that to other people, because people just thought oh, this girl has it all together. She's super confident. And on the inside, I was, this meek little girl that never felt enough, never felt like she was worthy of love and good enough. So with anything, it just takes baby steps and one little action step at a time.
Yeah. And I think the more we do that, the more we flex those muscles, the more we give others permission to shine too.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of the saying, this is a little bit off to the side, but that saying that you don't need to dim others' lights in order for yours to glow too. And that we all, need to encourage one another just to shine bright. So I love that.
Amen.
I do want to know, a little bit about pageantry, just to switch gears a little bit. I know we talked about Mrs. New Hampshire a little bit with your stories and how you've been able to incorporate both the brand Amber Lilyestrom as well as Mrs. New Hampshire. But what got your start in pageantry, and why did you feel like that was the right move for you and your life and your family?
Yeah, well, so I had done fitness competitions for a few years, but if I'm being completely honest, it was just code for hiding my eating disorder. So I was like, oh, they're going to really show me how to train, and how to diet down. So that was why I was doing that. But the silver lining was I met amazing women, entrepreneurs, many of them, who had built these awesome businesses of women's empowerment. And I was learning by just being a part of it. And I think it was a really important step in my process. It also got to this place where I remember being backstage at a show and going, wow, this is so bizarre. I feel like the fattest girl in the room. I feel like I don't want to do this. I don't even know why I'm here. Like it really was a kind of a dark moment, but I realized part of it was, I was like, I don't want to just be judged by my body. I want to be judged by my mind and my voice. Like if I'm going to do this thing, I want to be able to use my voice, and I want to be able to like share what my truth is. I just feel like this is like a huge disservice to all of us backstage. Like I think we're all these incredible women, and we're just being treated like we're, like walking out on stage and being given a number and being written off because our thighs jiggle or something. I just like, this is so weird. I just had this moment of like, okay, I'm good. Like I'm done with this. And so then to be completely honest, I never really had any intention of doing anything further, with pageantry or any of that stuff. But one of my friends, was Mrs. New Hampshire America 2012, Carrie Alex. I remember she called me, kind of out of the blue. And I had gone to her pageant to cheer her on the year that she won. And we had kind of just like joked about it a little. She's like, well, you're going to do it. And I'd always be like, yeah. I never, I didn't say no, but I was not like, oh yeah, like sign me up. I'm ready to rock. And so she was like, I have some great news. And I said, well, what's your great news? And she said, you're doing Mrs. New Hampshire. And I was like, what's your great news? And
like,
I like that she was,
what?
yeah. And so, and mind you, this was only 2016. So it wasn't that long ago. And I said, yeah, I just kind of like need a beat to think about it. And she's like, you said you wanted to do it like kind of in passing. So this is the year, like you're going to do it. There's new directors, like, and I'm like, well, I need some time. So I kind of thought about it, and my ego got in the way. And then finally had this moment. I was like, will you just stop taking yourself so seriously? Like what you're better than this. Like you're too good for that. I was literally like challenging myself. I was like, you are like, and I love a challenge, So then I kind of felt like I was getting kind of dared to do it. So then, of course, I said yes. I'm like, all right, game on. Like, let's do this thing. But I promised myself, and this is an important thing to hear, I promised myself that, one, I was not going to do any, like, dieting down, training, preparation. I was going to go as I was. And mind you, it was only like 5 weeks out from the pageant. So I didn't have a lot of time. And Carrie was like, I've got you. I've got a dress place. We're going to go. Like, I'm going to help you with all this. I was like, as long as you help me with this, I'm in. So we went, I tried on the dress, I did the thing, I was like, okay. And I promised myself in the parking lot, the day that I got there for our pageant, I said, I promise I will not abandon myself today. I will not compare myself to somebody. I will not put myself down. I'm going to stay in my light. And that is my challenge today. I'm just going to be me, and I'm going to shine my light, and I'm going to love people, and I'm going to be grateful for this opportunity and experience. So I went in, and I was just myself the whole day. I was just like loving, and I was just so grateful to be there, because I love being girly. I just did a photo shoot for New Hampshire Wedding Magazine yesterday, and just got to do the whole glam thing, and it was so fun, and I love it. I've always been like the girl that loved getting dressed up and doing princessy things, and so it felt awesome, and I was super, super, super excited to get to do the interview and to tell my story. And to really like talk about what I was passionate about, which was supporting this organization. So it ended up being like this doorway for me to really connect with Haven and to really start laying the tracks down for that work that I've wanted to do in my life. And so pageantry was the way that I started doing that. And it was wild. When they announced I was the, one of the top 2 finalists, and then they're like putting a crown on my head, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is this happening right now? Now
it's real life.
Like, now I have to go to Mrs. America. I'm like, wow, this is so crazy, And I just rode the magic carpet ride of the whole thing. And I ended up Mrs. Main, who was my roommate, we became dear friends. And I actually, while we were there the whole week, she just posted about it today. Like I coached her the whole week, and she just recently left a 14-year career in dental hygienist work and now has her own business as an entrepreneur.
Oh my gosh, that's
and
amazing.
It's like there's so many like amazing blessings that came out of it. So I'm so grateful. And I also get to keep this amazing crown for the rest of my life.
Right? I know people all this weekend were like worried. They're like, wait, you have to crown your successor. Does that mean you have to like give back your crown? I was like, oh no, that thing stays with me the rest of my life. Like I'm going to sleep in that the rest of my life. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you for sharing that. And too bad we wouldn't have been the same year. Maybe we could have been roommates and you could have coached me so I could, be more focused on my business. I love that. Well, as we kind of wrap up today, I have a couple questions that I ask all my guests. I would just like to know, what are your top 3 core values? Yeah, I'll let you go with that one. These are kind of like rapid fire questions.
Yeah. Love, trust, and gratitude.
I love that. Do you have a third one? I thought that was
love, trust, gratitude.
Love, trust, gratitude. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry, cut out for a second. I love those. Do you have any resources that you've been binging on lately? It could be like a book, a podcast, audiobook, whatever, a show.
The book that I love the most is called The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo. And I read that every single night before bed. And usually I choose a passage in the morning as well. It's a devotional book and it's absolutely beautiful. And then also I'm actually right now I've been very plugged into this amazing woman. Her name is Sarah Blondin, and she has a podcast called the Live Awake podcast, but she does like these incredible meditations and they're very deep and very powerful. So I'd say those are probably the 2 places where I've been plugged in the most.
I'll have to check her out, especially I like her last name. I'm a blonde.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my last question, very open to her interpretation, but what does it mean to do things with style and grace to you?
It means to just be you, and own it all the way through in whatever it happens to be. And I think for someone who struggled with an eating disorder and with the same challenges you talked about of like the self-love piece and being really self-critical, it takes a little extra effort, to really kind of peel back through the layers and figure out what is me, what feels good for me, specifically with clothes, specifically being someone who's struggled with body dysmorphia, and really like getting to, there's no greater joy than getting to that place of just fully owning it and just putting on an outfit and feeling beautiful from the inside out and radiating that outward and just owning it all. Like and that is not something for me still that is like comes super easy. It's still daily work, but it's the best feeling ever. And so I'm committed to that work for the rest of my life.
I love that. And it's like the confidence muscle, we've got to keep working out and keep it strong.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah.
Where can my listeners, find you, stalk you, follow you in the good ways, obviously?
Yeah, you guys, I'm over at amberlilyestrom.com. And I'm also, I have the podcast called the Amber Lilyestrom Show podcast. And I'm on Instagram every day. You guys can watch my Insta stories. I'm always, we live on a lake and with my little one and just going on my paddleboard and running and just doing all the fun, adventurous things that we do over here. So I'd love for you guys to connect with me on Instagram as well.
Oh, fun. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'll have to check out that more. We live in Eastern Washington, so there's a lot of, rivers and lakes around here and stuff too.
Yeah,
so maybe I'll get some more outdoor inspiration from you.
Yeah, sister. Well, thank you for having me. This has been such a joy.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Well, hopefully my listeners will find you and follow you on social media as well and reach out to you.
Hey ladies, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. To help empower more women, please be a doll and rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. For show notes and other free resources we mentioned today, go to styledbydeidra.com.